So this is our first episode for movie reviews, and tonight I thought I'd make drinks for a movie review. So tonight I made a drink. I named it the HAL 9000 in order of the movie. It's got peppermint vodka, ginger ale, and cinnamon candy in the bottom. I'll show you a video. I'll show you guys a picture on Twitter. Cheers. It's actually not that bad.
It's as deadly as the HAL 9000 in 2001: A Space Odyssey. But it is kind of reminiscent of HAL 9000.
So the movie we decided to review for today, we just actually finished watching it too. It's the first time we've watched it. It's a 1968, I think it said? 1968, yeah. Stanley Kubrick film called 2001: A Space Odyssey. You want to explain it?
So 2001: A Space Odyssey is probably one of Kubrick's most seminal films. It is an important film to watch. It was recognized by the Library of Congress in 1992 as a culturally significant film. This film is important to watch because it has influenced almost every sci-fi film since 1968. So if you watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, you'll see elements that you see throughout Star Wars. You see the continuous philosophy of artificial intelligence coming out to wipe out man, which is a theme that you see throughout the Terminator movies. You even see a trip out to Jupiter, which is eerily reminiscent of the recent film Interstellar. So, and it even has a Tesseract type scene toward the end of the film that is eerily reminiscent of Matthew McConaughey's Tesseract scene in Interstellar. So Mr. Kubrick was definitely a visionary in his time to make a film that talked about the evolution of humanity, from the early evolution of mankind from an ape to modern man, and then to I will call him a superhuman that transcends time and space in the heavens above. So
I definitely think it's very interesting that all the visuals and all the graphics are done without any kind of computer-generated problems because it's 1960s. It still looks almost as good as it does today.
These are problems rather than computer-generated effects. But anyway.
Sorry.
So it's, in my opinion, 2001: A Space Odyssey in terms of the visual effects is quite amazing. It is definitely a film that was made ahead of its time. For those of you that are aware, Stanley Kubrick has once been rumored the man to be behind the video footage of the United States moon landings. There's a lot of references to this in his film The Shining, and I think after watching 2001, you can definitely see why those rumors persist today, why that conspiracy still lives on today, because again, many of the special effects used in Kubrick's film, a lot of the prop sets and a lot of the spacecrafts that he shows are very reminiscent of spacecraft we still use today. Even the space station, the International Space Station, looks like the space station that is shown in 2001. So a man who was perhaps 30 years ahead of his time, it's quite astonishing that his vision of space is eerily coincident with our vision of space today, and we have all the photographic evidence to back that up. So, in terms of the plot, there's not much to say. It's kind of dopey and chopped up, but I think he does try to make a film that speaks to the overall evolution of mankind. It doesn't always make sense. A lot of it is probably steeped in his head. It's a little bit like trying to read Ulysses, James Joyce's Ulysses, but in film form. So definitely a lot of references that are probably buried deep inside Kubrick's head, manifested on film. But if you can get through that and just sit back and enjoy the visuals, it's definitely a film worth watching.
I think it's one of those films that you don't necessarily you're not really looking for like a storyline per se, you're more watching it to see what he wanted to envision of space. It's definitely a visual movie more so than a storyline based movie. The movie's a tad long, but it doesn't feel that bad when you watch it.
Except for that intermission.
The intermission is not necessary. But visually it's very stunning. It's very beautiful. The colors, everything is very well done, especially the last about 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. It shows a lot of cool visual effects that he manipulated stuff with, and it looks very cool on screen. How would you rate it overall?
So given the fact that the film has been influential since 1968 in all of our sci-fi films, or not all, but perhaps a great majority of them, I'd probably have to give the film an 8. I'm knocking it down 8 out of 10. I'm knocking it down 2 points because, like I said, the story is not very well cohesive. He definitely has some very grandiose themes that have played out throughout other movies, and I think those little themes could have been made into their own films. I mean, he definitely talks about how mankind has always been a violent creature, and you see that at the very beginning with the dawn of mankind. You have the ape using the bone to kill, to destroy, first at another species so that it can eat, and later on he uses the bone in violence against his own species to assert his power. So that theme could be played out in its own film, and it's kind of just crammed in there for about 20 minutes. And then again, you have the theme about artificial intelligence that humanity creates that at some point becomes self-aware and then turns on humanity because humanity is an inferior creature. So again, that theme can be played out. It's probably even played out in today's film Chappie. So for that, obviously the film is very, very influential. But again, those elements don't quite fit together. And so you're really just watching beautiful visual poetry rather than a cohesive story, and it loses points for that.
I agree. I would probably give it 8.5. I think the direction and the visual effects are so great that it kind of makes up for the lack of storyline. If you can manage to bluster through all the bits and pieces of storyline, you get to see such a visually well-directed and well-stunning video that it kind of makes up for the lack of storyline. And so, last thing, what do you think the end scene means, where he's in the Tesseract or the cube?
All right, so we'll have to rewind for our audience a little bit. So toward the end of 2001: Space Odyssey, you have Dave, who ventures out onto space toward Jupiter in his little spherical spacecraft, and venturing in there, he finds this black monolith that leads him further into space, and somehow he begins to get sucked into this space-time continuum that explodes in an array of colors, and it takes you down this dark journey, almost like you're going toward heaven. And suddenly, the spaceship is in a room that looks like it's in the Versailles Palace, except the floor is lit like a 1970s dance floor. And then suddenly you see Dave, the young man, looking onto Dave, the old man, an old weathered astronaut. And then a few scenes later you see Dave, even older, but dressed like a Hugh Hefner in a velvet robe, trying to eat a dinner by himself. And then a few scenes later you see an even more decrepit and worn out Dave lying in bed waiting for death to take him. And at that point, this black monolithic rectangular shape appears in front of him and essentially takes him from death back to birth. And at that point, the film ends with a child floating in the nebulas of space, overlooking onto Earth. So I think in the end, that was Kubrick's way of saying that life is a continuum. You have life leading to death, and at death you have birth again, and the whole cycle of life begins again.
I agree. I think it means cycle of life, but I also feel like that once he goes on the mission from into the cube over to Jupiter, after he gets past Jupiter and goes into the cube, I feel like he's stuck there in a sort of purgatory till he dies and then is reborn and sent back to Earth. I'm not really sure. I definitely think it has some kind of symbolism, but as to what it means, I don't know if we'll ever fully know. But yeah.
You'll have to ask Mr. Kubrick.
Overall, it was a great movie. Leave suggestions below in the comments below about what movies you'd like to see us do next week. I take suggestions all the time, and hope you guys liked it.